Okay, Nicolò Zennaro is a PhD student here at at the University of Antwerp. He's part of the Back to the Future project, and he's really finishing. He's really at the end, almost, of finishing his PhD dissertation. So salvation is almost near, but maybe he has sinned too much, but that will be weighed upon at the final judgment in a few months. Nicolò, the floor is yours.
No pressure at all, but like, okay, works also this one. Okay. Thank you for the introduction. I use this one, maybe it's better. Okay, in my presentation, I'm going to show you what kind of mercantile futures related to risk, mainly the risk of war, are emerging indeed from the commercial letters. And it's a way to stress out the potential of our sources. And before of all, I introduce my sources. Indeed, I'm working with letters from the Dattini archive. It's a collection of 150,000 letters written by the members of the commercial company, indeed, of Francesco Dattini. In my case, I'm dealing with the Venetian case study, precisely with a corpus of 879 letters written from Venice between the 1389 and the 1411. My aim is to study Tuscans and Venetians in order to provide a comparison in my thesis. And for transcribing the entire amount of his letters, I created and used a transcribus model. And that was the only way for making it possible. One correspondence is the one produced by Paris di Zuane Soranzo, a Venetian patrician, probably a young merchant. I'm not sure about it because it's difficult to find more biographical information about this merchant, but I was able to connect him to the famous family of the Soranzo del Banco, deeply studied by Elaine Muller for money changing in the city. And the other correspondence is built by the Piaciti company, that is a Tuscan company managed by Bindo di Gerardo Piaciti, my main economic actor. But I have also letters written by his secretary and brother-in-law, Bartolo di Amerigo Zatti. And what's interesting is that these merchants are connected through family links to the family of Francesco di Marco Dattini. What I'm interested in is the risk perception of these merchants. So the people's beliefs, attitudes, judgment, and feelings toward risk. That is a concept that indeed includes social and cultural values of these people and show the attitude of this person through shocks or risk in general. Risk that I mean from a future thinking point of view. So the possibility in the future to suffer harm, punishment, negative event, inconvenience, or loss in the near future. And I mainly work with the concept of grand'anno, that can be translated with great damage. That is a kind of high uncertainty and high risk situation that you can find written in both languages, so in Tuscan and in Venetian. And I use it for define my area of analysis. So what kind of events were perceived as disasters by these people? And for analyzing them, I use the practices and the actions of these merchants. This is an example indeed of the occurrence of the term grand'anno. As you can see, the most frequent one is the war indeed, the purple one. And that's the reason why I decided to analyze this great damage today. And my main question is how merchants used to react to war and how I use future thinking for doing that. Before of all, what I consider practice is the collective point of view related to the reaction of these people that is built through the know-how, the custom, the habit, and the cyclical applications of practices of resolution indeed. In this case, analyze merchant books, insurances, contracts, rituals of these merchants emerging from the letters and also from the literature. For example, concerning war, I found references in the Zibaldone da Canal, that is a merchant book, merchant manual precisely, and Cotrugli, referring to astrology as a way for forecasting situation of high risk coming from war, the news scattering, so a common practice not only for merchants, mentioned it in Pegolotti, Zibaldone, Da Canal, and also Cotrugli, all of three of them merchant manuals. And in the end, a reference in the memoir of Giovanni Morelli that is talking about the reference to old people's opinion, so the experience that is shared by indeed a same community, and a reference to prudentia, so pondering decisions before indeed dealing with war. What's interesting also the reference indeed to information gathering. In the letters, I found references to 4 sources of information. Nuove de Qui, so the news spread by the Venetian institutions. Nuove de Terra, the news coming from the mainland through letters. Nuove de Mar, the news brought by through the sea, through galleys or otherwise letters. And in the end, rumors, mentioned as se dice, se volgarizza. And I didn't consider secrecy in this case because it was not evident from this conflict that I analyzed. In the end, indeed, actions. I mean as action, the individual point of view of a reaction. So how people created from an individual perspective their reaction to this risk. And in this case, I mean as action, indeed, the future expectations. That I decided to explain through this image. It is showing how people collect information. We process them through the knowledge that I mean as the together of culture, experience, instinct. And from this, we build future expectation that declare as not knowledge. So a fictional knowledge that people use to take decisions. And here I write to, let's say, to the content of my presentation to show the results of my research. So the conflict I'm going to analyze is the one brought about the expedition in Italy of Rupert of Palatinate. He's a king of the Romans and he's trying to prove himself to be a possible candidate to become emperor. And he took the crown to Wenceslao IV, that was not really interested, honestly, to have a conflict with Rupert because he was probably more bothered by his hangover. Indeed, he was an alcoholic. And Rupert is difficult to find in historical research because has not been one of the best of the king of the Romans. Indeed, all the chronicles I saw referring to him, they only say no, something about his political achievement, something related to his ability, but they say he had a beautiful wife. So not exactly how you will define a good politician. And this king of the Romans was supported by Florence, Padua, and Bologna against Gian Galeazzo Visconti. There was with this warlord that was threatening the freedom of several city-states of the Italian peninsula. Venice is not clear what wants to do with this king of the Romans. Simply says, okay, let's support the cities that are supporting him to see what's going to happen, better than be invaded by Visconti. And from this situation, I saw indeed letters referring to mercantile prayers that are one of the main points from, one of the main results coming from my research. So the use of references to God by the merchants to ask divine intervention to solve situation of crisis. For example, people often say to me, oh, okay, it can be a sort of formula. No, it's not the case because the formulae are like, may God guard you. But it's not the case for these prayers that you will see. And they were used by the merchants in moment of high uncertainty and situation of high risk, for example, the great damages. And this is a case, like when Paris Soranzo, the Venetian, heard about of arrangement for the arrival of the emperor in Italy. He's hearing about Gian Galeazzo Visconti enforcing his positions, preparing a great army. Seeing that war is nearby will be a huge war, in his opinion. He concludes all this information with, may God promise the best for the Christians. and is, I think, more intense and way different from May God Guard You. And we see that also from the main event related to the expedition of Rupert, and is the Battle of Brescia. It's a battle where, indeed, Rupert shows to not be the most suitable of emperors. Indeed, with an army of 10, 15,000 or 20,000 people lost against not even 6,000 people in front of the city of Brescia. And this brought great shame to the emperor and a situation of high uncertainty between all the merchants in the peninsula. And Rupert escaped to Padua, where he tried to rebuild his army through loans or asking for help, but this didn't happen. This is indeed the description that we have about the battle. Indeed, referring again to information, you see how much detail there is in there, like the name of the people attending the battle, how the battle briefly has been fought. In the end, there is the reference to Rupert escaping and going to Padua before to Trento. What is interesting is like here is that it really expressed the high uncertainty of the situation. No one expected Rupert to lose. Indeed, we read, everyone was astonished, and so the matter went horribly wrong. No one would have imagined that. I do not know how it will continue. God promised for his mercy the best, which is needed. And again, Piaciti the same. Rupert arrives in Padua. Everyone describes his army arriving, beautiful people, beautiful nights. Everyone hopes still for the best. Indeed, may God give them the grace to do what is to be done for our city, in this case Florence, for Piaciti, and put all of Italy in peace that we need them. And then we move to another kind of future, that is the mercantile prophecy. In the sense, this is what I think is a sort of mercantile prophecies. So Piaciti, in light of the situation, see that Venice is continuing to support Padua, despite Padua suffering this loss, and see that Venice wants the war to go on between these various factions to have them weakened. At some point, Piaciti realized that Venice has a plan, probably, and described it in this way, saying, as you see, the Ermine, Venice indeed, has begun to die its leg a little in the river. We believe that his game will have no end. He will fully dive into it. The Venetians want to play it, but do not risk. Indeed, later Venice decided to enter the war, but against Padua. Takes advantage of the city of Padua and conquer the entire territory that was indeed under the control of his signoria, mainly indeed Padua, indeed Verona, Vicenza, Belluno, and Feltre, and start the expansion of the Venetian territories in the mainland. Indeed, this is the map showing the dominion of Venice after the event. Where it is indeed 1405, 1404. But that would be the starting point for the Venetian Empire to go in the mainland. And it's interesting also the reference to the war as a game, because I found 4 references to this kind of conceptual war as a game that I was wondering, okay, why a game? Maybe merchant can play this game, know what does involved to be in a war. And my point of view is, yes, they know how to play the game because they have a lot of experience related to war. Okay. There is quite the experience related to war since the 1340s, when the great companies of mercenaries came from France to Italy and they brought a situation of high conflict. Or otherwise, the several conflicts in the 70s then brought on by Gian Galeazzo Visconti. Also, you see that there is a way for knowing how the game developed from the information gathering. Indeed, these kind of information are often super detailed, as you have seen from the reference of Paris Soranzo. Okay. And This is the normalized number of references that I found in my letters related to this conflict, or by the way, conflicts brought about by Visconti. As you can see, Paris is really obsessed with this kind of information, and even more with 1401, that is the moment where he's hearing about this conflict that is arising because indeed of the title of Rupert as like king of the Romans. And then there is the most obvious of the future thinking, that is the business forecasting. And sees also like how merchants perceive war from an economic perspective. And everyone expects this, like, we're oppressed, I don't know what's going to happen. It's not really the case. Indeed, precisely Dattini, that is like the main actor of the entire system of the Dattini company, shows that war is profit. Indeed, is producing armor, it's producing swords. At some point where people are killing each other in the battlefield, he's super happy because now people will buy a lot of candles, finally. So there is an opportunity in war. And this is the case also for Piaciti. When he hears that the emperor decided that the campaign is done and is leaving, he's immediately say, okay, perfect, we don't have to pay him anymore. But also the money exchange will be more profitable for us. And there is also damage coming from business, from the business of war. And it's explicit from this, like when they talk about the situation in Padua, and they say, concerning your wool, we could not find anyone interested in it. Most of this problem is caused by the war, because of which no one is trading. And again, situation of the emperor leaving, there is the comments related to him having great shame, but at the same time says, yeah, and he also emptied our purses. So shows that indeed war can bring also damage to the merchants. In the end is the last kind of feature that I found in the letters, but is more, how can I say, an hypothesis that I have. Because what I see as astrological future is coming from a comparison between chronicles, historiography, literature related indeed to an event of this period. Like this is an extract from the little chronicle, the Chronicetta, coming from a Venetian anonymous, describing how in 1402, a comet appeared from the west, which showed the most brilliant rays and appeared by night and day. This comet was the sign of the death of the great barons of the world. And indeed, like this comet appeared on the Sunday, 11th February 1402, and has been viewed from Europe, Asia. Indeed, there are several descriptions of it from battles where people magically won because appeared the comet, or at some point, great catastrophes have been brought by this comet again. And what is interesting is that it was visible from indeed the 11th of February to the 26th of March in the period of Lent. So everyone was even more suggested by that. But I have not direct mention of this in my letters. But exactly in the same day, the 11th of February, 1402, Paris started to use a different reference to future thinking. That is, no one knows what happened next. We are waiting for the new time. And again, wonderful things will be seen in the new time. May Christ in his mercy promise the best. Indeed, is this concept of new time, tempo nuovo, that is emerging from these letters. And it's something that is a term that I found not in these letters, but in later letters from the 1500, referring to the new year generally. And the problem is that like Paris, despite writing often in the period when was like the New Year's Eve for Venice, so the 1st of March, uses this reference only for the period where the comet is passing by. And that's what brought me to think about it. And I have 4 references, and the last one is the 15th of February. And it's a hypothesis, okay, but I honestly found it interesting. And indeed, there are 2 events that are indeed probably resulting from this astrological phenomenon. And indeed is often referred to the death of Gian Galeazzo Visconti, exactly in that year. And often when people describe the death of Visconti, they talk about this comet. Or the victory of the people of Bologna against a mercenary army, the one of Alberico da Barbiano, that was one of the captain of Visconti, and showed how there is like a wonderful, I think also unrealistic loot coming from this battle. 200,000 ducats is something that I don't think even Venice in an entire year of trading could gain. And what you can read is indeed the great events will occur with a new time. So my conclusions are a little bit general, honestly. So war shows several future thinking. That's what I found interesting. And also ways in which like this future is elaborated and written down in the letters. What you can see is like merchants use the future thinking for profit from the war, but also to react to the effects coming from the war. Economic ones, in my case, but I expect like reading all the correspondences also to find all the kind of risks. And the point is also that it's particular to talk about future expectation and war, because I haven't found wars like work related to this kind of relationship or link, and precisely from an individual experience of a war. So how people perceive war, mainly I would say merchants indeed perceive war, and how use it to make profit out of it. Simply general works about it. And I thank you for your attention.